So welcome to Minister, I suppose, Joe O'Brien. I know with responsibility here for community development and charities, and I thank you for taking this commencement, I suppose, on behalf of Minister Heather Humphreys as well. I suppose what we're looking at here is requesting an update from the Department, I suppose, of Rural and Community Development on how we can support open access to school buildings after hours, and that's for local communities and youth organisations through the CLOR programme or other measures. You know, it's really important that we have sort of a ready-made network of school buildings. We have an infrastructure that's not been used once the school day is finished. How do we prioritise and ensure that the CLOR programme can be used to make sure that there is more access after school hours? And that's for facilities such as the community spaces within schools like halls and so on, but playgrounds, astroturfs, you know, basketball courts. There's significant investment, and we've seen it over the last number of years in school buildings across the country, and still more needed. But we need to ensure how we ensure maximum usage, and particularly in our smaller towns and villages. You know, there isn't a huge amount of choice when it comes to community or public spaces. Our colleague, Deputy David Staunton, is championing the usage of school building and schools facilities outside of school hours. As Fine Gael education spokesperson, you know, I very much support increasing accessibility to these facilities, but I suppose especially after this period of lockdown. But also, I really would like to see how all age groups could use it. Obviously, yes, young people, but you know, we could also think about how we roll out evening courses through our ETBs, educational training boards, you know, for the rollout of digital or literacy training. I very much understand there can be insurance staff or other financial concerns for principals and school boards of management. But I suppose, Minister, in your portfolio, and I suppose within Minister Heather Humphreys' portfolio and under the CLAR programme, how can we support schools to increase access? If I could ask for an update, and I suppose just how we can make this a prerequisite of the CLAR programme.
Schools are all very much valued in their communities, and not just from an education perspective. They sustain rural populations and are often viewed as an indicator of how a particular area is faring. They also provide a vital link for sports and social activity. Schools play a wide role in their communities, and many schools make their facilities available outside of school hours for a variety of different uses and users. Schools are often the centre of sustainable communities, and there can be mutual benefits in building links with the local community. Indeed, many schools recognise this and make their facilities available outside of school hours for a variety of community and other activities. As the Senators may be aware, the policy of the Department of Education is that school premises and facilities should be used for community and recreational purposes where possible. In October 2017, following consultation with the relevant school authorities, the Department published guidelines on the use of school buildings outside of school hours. The purpose of these guidelines is to provide information for schools in relation to the use of school buildings outside of school hours, and for those schools who are considering putting such arrangements in place. Any decision to make school facilities available lies with the relevant trustees or property owners, having regard to the requirements of the school, staff and students. I do very much encourage schools to seriously consider making their facilities or premises available to the wider community if they are not already doing so. I would recommend that schools study the guidance provided by the Department of Education, as it provides a good framework and a list of topics to be aware of when a school opens to the wider community. As regards the CLOR programme, it funds a range of measures to be delivered by schools and communities, including for the enhancement or development of play areas or multi-use games areas, or MUGAs. The CLOR programme provides funding under a number of different measures for small-scale infrastructural projects in designated rural areas. Under Measure 2 of CLOR 2021, €2.3 million in funding was provided to support outdoor community recreation facilities, including playgrounds. Many of these were located on school grounds. This year's programme was launched on the 24th of February last with a total budget of €7 million, an increase of €1.5 million on 2021. It provides for an updated measure which will support a variety of capital interventions that contribute to community recreation facilities. It again covers playgrounds and multi-use gaming areas that might be located on school grounds, although it does not fund works to school buildings that are still in use as schools. The conditions attached to the CLOR programme require that such facilities should be available for wider community use. Many schools in CLOR areas are willing to make their playground facilities available for community use and have received support under the programme on that basis. The objective is that these facilities would be available to local families and visitors to the area. I discussed this topic in the Dáil last week, and I have also written to Minister Foley on the issue, and I'll continue to work with colleagues to see how we can support schools to become more accessible where required. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Minister, and I suppose, look, it's just crucial. I know that you've mentioned here in your response that, you're allowing, that schools are encouraged to make it available for wider community use. But I do think we need something stronger here where the boards of management, if there are challenges for them on the ground, that we are maybe engaging with them to see why maybe it's not happening in certain areas. You'll see from the CLAR funding area maps that the CLAR areas are dependent on DEDs, district electoral divisions, which are based on the public deprivation index, I suppose. And it's mainly in the west and it's mainly in the northwest. You'll see when you look at the map, and certain other pockets around the country, that these are areas that do not have access to maybe a wide variety of public facilities and public choice. So I just think that if there are areas where this has not been successful and we are funding it through the CLAR programmes, particularly for community facilities, that I suppose I would be asking your department, if they can give us an update on why they're not being used. So is there, in the reports that come back from the department on the funding, is it clear that the facilities are being open for after school hours access?
Thank you for the kind comments. Firstly, I think it's important to thank schools that are opening up and to acknowledge that that they're doing this, because there's a bit of work involved and there's an element of risk involved as well. So we should thank them for doing that and acknowledge it. But again, I would reiterate my request for other schools to seriously consider this. As I said, I've written to Minister Foley. I've suggested we open an engagement. Some things that I think we could perhaps look at is the guidance document. Perhaps that can be reviewed, perhaps that can be reissued, but I'm also very open to other ways that we can support schools that are not doing this at the moment to do so. There may be potential, particularly in the ETB area. I think obviously a lot of other schools have more private ownership. The ETB side of things may give us more options. But it's certainly an area that I've committed to working on now, and I look forward to receiving the response from Minister Foley on it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.